The Redefined podcast is part of the Winmate Give podcast network.
I don't know if you're watching the video of this right now. If you are, I have what appears to be homeless Santa Claus hanging out with me because the first time I ever went to jail was with this man. Oh my gosh, there are stories to tell. There are lessons to learn, and there is a bromance a brewing here on the Redefined podcast. I have my brother, Adam Martin from F5 joining us. Adam, how you living, my good sir?
It's crazy. As you can see, we're getting ready for Christmas. We do an annual Christmas gift giving, if you will, to all the kids of the people that live in our houses. And so I'm going to be getting everything ready, and then I'm running to Minot, Bismarck, Grand Forks, and then obviously Fargo. I'm going to do four Christmases for kids.
I love it. As we record this, it's December 15th, 2023. You're probably listening to this months later, but Adam is driving all around the state of North Dakota, which is one town every hour. So if you drive for an hour, you're going to hit the next town. And then if you drive for an hour, you're going to hit the next town. And so as he gave you the geographic drive around the state of North Dakota, he's got at least 10 hours ahead of him to drop off all these presents. Adam, I know a lot about F5. I had the privilege of being there when F5 was birthed, when it was started. I got to see God at work through you in this. And F5 today is doing something pretty special. So educate our listeners, if you would, on what F5 is and why it makes such a difference.
Yeah, our focus is adults, kids, and more recently law enforcement, PTSD and trauma therapy, peer support. So that's across the board. So the same thing that we do for people coming out of prison, we try to do with just random people walking in for treatment, to law enforcement with a program called Soldier's Heart, youth initiative. So it used to be at one time where, guys like me and Eric would just go into the jail and just tell a story, to robust services around helping people secure employment, housing, recovery, across the state of North Dakota. And so we started in 2016, 17-ish, with just me and another individual. And fast forward to today, we have multiple companies, about 100 staff, and we're located pretty much all over North Dakota.
I'm really proud of you, Adam. Just sincerely, I got introduced to you through a mutual friend of ours, Mark Headland, used to be on my team, and he was, I think, the first person that went to jail with you. And after like 2 weeks, he's like, Hatch, you got to come. You're better at speaking than I am. And I went in there, dude. I was so scared, Adam. I'm a guy who is like suburban white. I got arrested when I was 11 for shoplifting, and I was scared straight. Like that was my bad boy phase. And I walk into a jail, and there's guys that are in there for murder. There's guys that are in there for stealing and drugs and all the aforementioned. And I thought I was going to get shivved. I'm shiv free. I live to tell the tale, but like, I gotta be like most people, aren't I? Where like, I have no idea what's happening behind those walls in those cells.
Yeah, at that time we were, the vast majority of people we were bringing in, after you were, CEOs or, entrepreneurs and stuff, because there's a very fine line between starting up your life and starting up a business. There's a lot of similarities, a lot of skill set, a lot of emotional roller coaster, and so most of the people that we brought in, very similar experience. They've never been around, a couple inmates, let alone 60, so
all in orange jumpsuits.
Yes.
And they just are coming in by block, and
yeah, it can be intimidating because all you see, that's the epitome of like, the definition of that stigma, right? Is that all you see is the orange jumpsuit. So then you just assume naturally probably the worst, right? And so that's just, and that's not bad. That's just survival instinct, right? Like you just, there's someone there that has been convicted of crime, and now you're in the same room with them and you have no idea what that crime was. So and that's the same thing with mugshots. It's the same thing with reentry, is people just, but as your experience, you'll probably relay more, is that it was probably one of the best nights of your life, that you get to be surrounded by some of the most, I mean, you want to meet people where they're at, and they're not pretending to be anything that they're not. They're not putting on a suit, they're not driving a nice car. Like it's the most human factor, is meeting people in jails and prisons, because that's their rawest form. Humble people.
It taught me a lot of lessons, and I spent I think 6-ish months or so going with you and watching it grow, and watching you find your groove as a guy who quit his job in tech sales as a 5-time felon and never should have had a job in tech sales in the first place, to now say you're gonna become an entrepreneur to serve people behind bars and incarcerated folks. I mean, like it's a fascinating story, gang, and I'm glad you get to be here to listen to it. But nonetheless, I want to live in that moment for just one more second, Adam. I was so freaking judgmental. And I didn't intend to be. I didn't want to be. If you would have asked me, Eric, are you an open-minded person? I am cloaked with confidence that I am the most open-minded, unbelievable, welcoming guy. This Christian with his arms wide open, saying, I love them all. Bring me your broken, bring me your battered. And I stepped in there, and I was in the corner sucking my freaking thumb. Because I was so intimidated by things that were different than me, which was why I think I kept going back. Is I was going to serve, but I was going to grow. I needed to mature as a leader and a man and a father and all these other things. And I recognized that I had isolated myself for so long from the people that I wanted to actually connect with. There's an author named Shane Claiborne. He's an activist and does some of these incredible things. And he says that the greatest tragedy and the biggest threat in our world is not clean water issues, and it's not global pandemics, and is not a lack of food and everything else. He says that the biggest issue in our world today is that the SUVs and picket fences of the world are keeping us from the people that desperately need our love and care. And so my time with you, Adam, I tried to give a bunch, but in that same accord, it was such a gift to me to try to open my eyes and change my perspective. So I just want to say thanks, bro. It was a pretty incredible gift.
Between all the speakers that we brought in there, Eric, the guys that penetrated the hearts the most was you and Mark Lindquist. So
can you not use penetration and me in the jail in the same kind of like?
Oh, so many different contexts that could be used there. But the whole, I remember when
I'm going to just make the title for this podcast Adam Martin penetrating in jail.
yeah, that'll probably go viral. So no,
that's so good.
The talk that you gave about changing your stars, I still have guys that they go through the cycle. They've been there a few times. Some of them gotten sober, but anytime we talk about speakers, if there was someone there that heard your talk, I always hear the reference of changing your stars. So you left an impression on a lot of guys.
Oh, thanks for that. I wanted to know, I want to get into your story and figure out how all this came to be, because I'm fascinated, Adam. And again, I'm super proud of you. It needs to be said and stated that there's a statistic of how many people that are incarcerated that are dealing with either mental illness or addictions of some sort. Do you know that statistic? Because I think that when we can give a bit of grace, understanding that the person's coming with some brokenness and some complication, I think that it's going to give us a little more empathy.
Yeah, I've heard different statistics, but I think the general idea is that about 87% of people that are in jail or prison struggle, either have a single diagnosis of addiction or mental health, or they have both. And so that's nationwide. The jails and prisons are the largest warehouse, for people who struggle with mental health. Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's a mop cleaning up a mess instead of us trying to figure out how do we keep the mess from being created in the first place. Speaking of messes, Adam Martin, you've been quite a mess for much of your life.
Still am.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you still are. And we had a conversation before all this started. You're like, hey, you got a lot of change in your life, which is a nice way to say, like, man, you look messy right now. So I see you, I see me. It's all the same. With all this being said, Adam, like, you come from brokenness. Yeah. Walk me through that.
Yeah, you usually hear about, people who are the black sheep of the family. And I think that my family was the black sheep family unit of the entire family. So
Mm.
it was, I come from, both sides of the coin. Both my mom and dad were in the military. And they very service minded, very dedicated to their nation. At the same time, struggled with drugs and alcohol. They met in a treatment center, and so it was going to be interesting, to say the
Their love
least.
story began in treatment. I didn't know that.
Yeah. They met in, he was there for alcohol and she was there for drugs. And to be, to give some context, I never saw my mom use ever until I was almost an adult. So it was, she pretty much took the role of taking care of me and my brother and my dad, because of his drinking. So a lot of toxic environment, due to him, a lot of abuse, mental, physical, verbal. We were living in Alabama, and then we made the trek up to Minnesota because that's where my mom's from. And then that was the beginning, for me, of, the very first feeling I had was I was the new kid in school, and I feel like I've been catching up ever since. Like it was a huge culture shock going from Alabama to Minnesota at a young age. And so I never was good at school. I don't have great memory, and a lot of the stuff in school is based on memory skills. And so I constantly had trouble doing homework. I was put on programs for behavior as early as first grade. And eventually I did drugs and drank, when I got to junior high. And from that point forward, I was just pretty much, just rebellion with everything. Very hard for my parents, very hard for schools. And then was eventually kicked out, and was sent to the job force when I was 16. And I was a CNA, and I worked overnights on an Alzheimer unit. And that was the beginning of my life. And from that point forward, I spent a lot of time in jail. I spent a lot of time, prior to that, in foster homes and juvenile detentions. And so I'm a product of the system, pretty much on probation from the time I was 13 until I was 31, in some system or another. And in a revolving door of jail, alcoholism, abuse. Like it was chaos. So that I don't there's a lot of stuff packed in there, and there's a lot of crazy things that happened during that time.
Yeah.
But really at the end of the day, is I was just a hopeless bum that had a severe drinking problem, and struggled with bipolar disorder. And with that was a recipe for disaster everywhere I went.
Uh, did you? I'm gonna take your language. You said you were a hopeless bum. When did you start believing that narrative for yourself?
When did I start believing that I was?
Yeah.
I, you know, probably as soon, somewhere between the ages of 18 and 20.
Okay.
I think that I surrendered to the fact that was probably the best my life was ever going to be, was sleeping on couches, severely addicted to drugs and alcohol, not being a present dad, cheating on women that I was in a relationship with, sleeping in all hours of the days just to sleep off the hangover. Like I couldn't keep a job for more than a paycheck, because as soon as I got paid, I'm at the liquor store buying alcohol. So it was right around that time that I I had high ambitions, and I thought that, because growing up, people told me, you can be anything that you want. You can be an actor, you could be the president of the United States, you could be, whatever it is that you wanted. And it I never those things all sounded awesome, but I think you know, I just never believed that I could be anything, from a very early age. I guess I just never really cared. And I think part of it had to do with trauma and abuse and stuff like that. So it was just like, the best I'm gonna do is maybe get a job that I might keep for a while. That was like my only real goal in my early 20s.
Mhm. It's an interesting contradiction to hear you can be anything you want while your dad is kicking the shit out of you and you're living in a single wide trailer, and you're surrounded by addicts and you're in juvie and you're getting like, there's a lot of conflict going on in your mind, Adam. Did you believe that the world was giving you a line? Because you told me that it was between 18 and 20 when you said, well, you recognize you were a hopeless bum, but your world was pointing to you're not going to amount to anything earlier on, wasn't it?
Yeah, my mom she was amazing. Like, no matter how much trouble I got into or how disrespectful I was, she was very loving and caring, and
Did you
she
get
would.
punished for your crimes and mistakes at home?
Oh, my mom tried.
Okay.
She really did. She tried to have discipline and accountability. I was not, I don't think anybody was ready for what the anger, the hostility, the aggressiveness. Like, my mom probably got to a point where she was scared to discipline me
Hmm.
because of how I would respond. So it was, so at,
Was
no,
was
there
it was
was.
this a learned behavior? Was your anger something that you modeled, or was this something that was just inside of you because you said you're bipolar?
I think it was more of a mental health issue than it was anything that I had learned. My dad wasn't there, so it wasn't a learned trait from him.
Mhm.
If I had done the things that I had learned, I would have just ran away. Like, that
Mm.
was, my mom was very, scared of raising me, because of what could potentially happen. So I basically built the environment around me to not have accountability, not have responsibility. And that was, so basically the only rule that we had with my mom was just don't bring the cops home, because she was so scared that if a system got involved, she would lose me. Like,
Mm.
because we had a very good relationship. I was very honest and open with her. But it was also like, it was kind of like having dynamite in the home. As long as I don't light it, it won't blow up. It was kind of
Mm.
like, and so she felt secure with having me there, but at the same time, it was a very unstable, toxic environment. Um, and so she did the best that she possibly could. I think she did better than she probably could. And this was the best result she was ever going to get, because I was the kid.
Uh, did you blame your mom for who you were?
No, I don't, because I've seen, like, now that I'm on the other end of it, and I've seen a lot of people and I've heard a lot of stories, I can't find a common denominator that makes kids bad, like, or makes bad behavior. I've seen guys tell me stories of how they came from the most amazing, loving homes, and they came from the SUVs and the nice homes, the good neighborhoods, had everything available to them, and they still turned out the same way I did. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so I think that there's trends out there that can show that we can probably pivot a little bit, and maybe some behavior will change. But for the most part, I think that there was something deep inside me, alcoholism, bipolar disorder, that was a big factor to the way that it turned out. And I don't think anybody was ready for it. Like,
Mm.
there was no one else in my family that was like me.
Mm.
My brother didn't turn out like me, and he came from the same home.
What'd your
Uh,
brother turn out like? I haven't heard you
I
talk
mean,
much of him.
Yeah, he's had his issues or whatever, but for the most part, he was nothing like me. He's a truck driver. He kind of stays to himself. He's raising his daughter by himself. Like he's a good individual, and it should be, have a lot of pride of the man he's came to be. But he grew up in the same identical house as me, and nowhere near went the lengths of destruction that I did.
Hmm. So it sounds like it's more nature than it is nurture. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's a combination. I don't think that there was any real recipe that was going to pull me out of it. Um, but yeah, I think, would it be different if this scenario was different, or this scenario, or this scenario? Maybe, but if those things were different, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Did you like who you were at 15?
no, I was athletic. I always had like captain positions, or had like the good, like quarterback or running back, or and so I enjoyed factors of me, but I always felt like I was the wrong person at the wrong time all the time. Like it was like just this weird cloud above me, that I always felt like I was alone in a room full of people. I always felt like I was the outcast. And this was before anything really even happened yet,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so the only ththing this is what we talk about in the recovery world, is that most of us look normal in every aspect, except there seems to be a common trend of like a nervous disposition about them. Right. And so I would just be in a room full of people, and I always seemed to just be the most nervous, or I felt like no one really knew me, or nobody wanted me around, or like those were the thoughts. And so I hated that about me. But, my capability, my skill set, my athletic ability, stuff like that, I really, really enjoyed about myself. So it was kind of split.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you had signs of being a leader. I've heard you talk all the time about how drug dealers make fantastic entrepreneurs, right? They're living in risk, and they're dealing with pressures and situations. They're analyzing to say, where's the opportunity? But early on, it sounds like you had these leadership things that were sparking inside of you, but you had no vehicle in which to deliver that. Does that feel
Mhm.
accurate?
Yeah, I think that there's a group of, I mean, you group them together, but there's a number of kids that are going through junior high, high school, whatever. Like the systems are not built to equip them. They're just not. There's no there's no the things that I struggled with and the things I succeeded with were vastly different than the other kids in school. And when I was really good at, athletics. I was really good at taking tests. I was really good at participation in a group, but I was not good at doing homework. I was not good at sitting still in class. I was not good at listening. I was definitely not good at it. If a teacher had an issue with me and humiliated me in class, definitely was not good at that. Where most kids, like you said, like you got arrested for shoplifting, that was enough. Like that was a game changer for you.
Mm-hmm.
The system's built for people like that. Okay. What it's not built for is people who, like, when I got caught shoplifting, I was trying to devise how I wouldn't get caught next time. You know what I mean? And so that entrepreneur mindset was like in everything that I did. And people would be usually, well, he's ADHD, or he thinks too much, or he can't sit still. And all those things that I got punished for are the exact same things that made me successful today.
Mm. Mm. That's so intriguing to know that you haven't changed your stripes. So I want to fast. We're going to come back, and I want to learn more about this, but I think there's something to be said about how you haven't changed your stripes, but you have changed the food that you're eating.
Mhm.
Okay. You were eating drugs. You were eating I don't know if you eat drugs, but like I'm trying to take that example, like drugs and alcohol and crime and stealing and doing anything you can to try to get ahead in life. And now it's like I'm gonna build something so big that's so impactful, and I'm gonna be different than what everybody else is doing. And like walk us through that journey, Adam, of going from where you've been to where you are now, because I think there's some lessons I want to pull from that and try to better understand.
Yeah, it's interesting timing that we're doing this, Eric, because my team, they're doing the Simon Sinek why thing or whatever, and they just interrogated me yesterday for like 2 hours trying to navigate through my why, and so you're 100% spot on. The only difference that I would say, Eric, is that my prior life had nothing to do with building at all. So like when I was feeding myself full of dope and eating pills and drinking alcohol and all that stuff, like trying to I was just trying to live in like a virtual reality of feeling good. Like it was because I felt like shit all the time, or I felt insecure, and as soon as I started drinking, I felt like I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof, right? The way that I feel building businesses today is very similar to the way I felt when I would drink. Like it just did something for me, right? And the problem is that when my mind knows that and my body's addicted to it, all it does is turn into autopilot to get as much of it as fast as I can all the time. And that's what I had to battle with when I got sober, is that the only time I feel good is when I'm fucked up. It prevented me from committing suicide. Like that's the crazy thing that I think people who don't struggle with this don't understand, is that if I'm using, I'm not trying to off myself, right? And that was the cake or death, right? If I can live in public humiliation, I can be, probably feel like even a piece of shit or whatever, but at least I'm feeling good while it's going on. And when I don't have that, I could be living an amazing life. And if I don't address those issues, I'm only going to get to a point where none of those things, they're just like alcohol, like they stop working, And so I had to figure out me, and I didn't know that at the time. And so the deal that I made was with God. Okay. And so I was sitting in a homeless shelter lobby waiting for a bed, and they didn't have a bed open, and they told me that they weren't going to have a bed, and it was really cold outside, and they told me that or I asked them, is it okay if I just wait here just in case a bed pop? Like that was my only thing that I had going on in my life, was asking if I could wait in a homeless shelter lobby until they had a bed. And they said yes, but if they had to close the doors, I would have to leave because I wouldn't have a bed. And so I sat in that church or that homeless shelter lobby on the floor with a stolen jacket that I had stolen earlier that day from a hotel room, because I came up with enough money to let a guy let me sleep on the floor of his hotel room, to give him, and I stole a jacket, and I walked over to the homeless shelter, and that's the current, situation. And I sat there, and I remember that time and another time that I made a deal with God, that I said, if you can keep me sober, I will help as many people as possible. That's like, I'm done praying. I'm done asking for anything. I will live whatever life you put in front of me, and I will do the next right thing to help the person nearest to me every day for the rest of my life. All I ask is that you take these thoughts out of my head, because the thoughts are what get me drunk. And thoughts combined with like being butterflies in my stomach when I think about alcohol, when I think about weed, when I think about coke. If you can just pull that out of me, I will spend the rest of my life helping other people. And so my life is not built on success is as much as it's me paying off a debt. Like I got a lot of awesome things that are going on, But the thing that I think about at night when I go to bed at night is that I have a debt that I owe to God because he did something for me that I would never have been able to do for myself. And he removed that obsession to drink. He removed the obsession to do drugs, and he replaced it with a passion, an obsessive, crazy passion to help other people and to pay off the debt that is owed to him for changing my life.
I haven't heard that story before.
Yeah, I don't really talk about it because I didn't believe it for a long time that it was real. And then the more I take inventory of my life, the more I realize it has nothing to do with anything. Like, if I never would have had that, I would have ended, if I never would have had those things that were going on inside me, I would have done great things, right? But now I'm starting to see how divine and how the plan of, I don't think that God gave me alcoholism. I don't at all. But I think that he will use anything to bring glory, right? And the absolute destruction of my life, kind of like, Job, right? Is in turn turned me into one of the most passionate lovers of grace ever, because of one snap of a finger completely changed everything for me. And when I got up and I decided that not only
Did you
I'm
sleep
gonna
in the
act.
lobby that day in that homeless
No, they
shelter?
came. A young lady gave me a bed, and a bed showed up, and it was
Okay.
over at Churches United in Moorhead, and
Yeah.
yeah, they gave me a bed that night, and I stayed there for a while, but I still didn't stay sober after that. That's not when I got sober. That was the beginning. That was the seed from God that anything is possible, especially removing, those things that were inside me that were blocking me from having a good life. So but it's all owed to him, Eric. There's literally all the stuff that I'm doing today is super easy in comparison to getting past that moment.
I'm really grateful to hear that. Just that story. I'm gonna hit you with a truth that I've believed, and I don't know if it's true or not. Has your addictive personality now become addictive to business and what you're building? And are there dangers in that?
Yeah, I mean, who's the loneliest person at a church?
Pastor.
Pastor, right? He's put on a different pedestal. He's higher expectations. There's just a lot that comes with being a leader. And I think that, there's a ton of sacrifice. There's a ton of people that don't understand, that if you don't do the job, then it's not going to get done. Right. Like there's a lot of in building. And so I think that I'm an addict, right? Did I become addicted to building a business? I think I became addicted to whatever was feeling good. And when building a business happened to fill in there, I think every entrepreneur is an addict in some, capacity. And if they weren't, I don't think that they could pull it off. I think that it's kind of like ego, right? Like there's a healthy form of ego, right? There's bad forms of ego, just like there's the upside of being an addict now because of all the skill sets it gave me on the streets that transferred it into business. To the downside of it is that it could become my identity, right? And so I think that there's as shitty as this word is for entrepreneurs, there is a balance. And I don't think it's a balance that people will understand. I think it's a balance of my mindset and like trying to pay attention to whatever's in front of me, right? Because if my kid's in front of me and I'm sitting on my phone doing business transactions, I'm failing, right? There's nothing, and I hope any entrepreneur or anybody who's like trying to find success hears this point. There is nothing so crucial that it demands your attention right now. Nothing. The only thing that falls into that category is a little 3-year-old girl that's saying daddy. That's it. Everything else can be figured out later. They can, like tonight or tomorrow or whatever. If it's an emergency situation that we have with like mental health crises and stuff, that's kind of different. But if making sure that I read this email about a business transaction from an attorney, I don't have to do it at the dinner table. That that can be that's a struggle that I've had, and I've learned that I have not come across anything that can't be figured out in 20 minutes.
Mhm.
It's usually us defining that it needs to be figured out right now.
Mhm.
And if it's not figured out, I'm not going to do it. So
Well,
it's a balance.
that's a hell of a God complex that I think people have, that we believe that we are so important, that we have to show up and we have to be there and we have to be the one, and that our immediacy is what matters the most. There are very, very, very few fires in this world that require that kind of immediacy. So I appreciate you going down that vein. Adam, how are you going to fail? Because you have addictive tendencies. You have built something really big, really quickly. Failure is inevitable. I wonder how you think you're going to fail. And I don't mean that as like a curse. I don't mean that as like I'm betting against you. This is, I'm coming through some failure myself personally. And it's like, oh, the mighty will fall.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think people in the community probably get more scared about me, failing than I do. I failed enough in my life to where it's, like if I wasn't an addict, if my dad would have stayed, if I would have had more consequences that actually worked, whatever, all the failures that are like the breadcrumbs across my journey. If I'm gonna take credit for my successes, I have to take credit for my failures too. And because both of those put me to where I'm at today. So let's say hypothetically, some Trojan horse comes into the industry and it just completely wipes us out. And I didn't see it coming. Well, that Trojan horse was God at the time when I got sober. I did not plan on getting sober.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given a life that
You wanted to be sober though, right? I mean, the prayer that you prayed in the lobby of that homeless shelter had you saying that you wanted to be sober, but you didn't plan 100%. On it.
But I didn't think it was going to work. Like it was not.
Did you believe that you weren't of redemption, that you couldn't be redeemed?
No, I did not have any. I didn't have any belief. I just thought that I was doomed to an alcoholic death. Like that was going to be my story. Like I didn't think I was going to be like I said, like the best I thought I might do is be able to find a job that would pay me, that would pay me hourly, that I might keep for a while. But I didn't anticipate that I was actually going to have a bank account or a car or anything like that. So all this is like everything that we have between the houses, the properties, the offices, all the amazing people. This is all on borrowed time for me. Like I really, really believe to my core that I'm living a life that was given to me, and I'm basically just paying rent on it. And so if something came through, and then what that also does for me is it keeps me humble, that it isn't about me, that I'm trying to do my best to make it less about me and more about him. Right. So it was given to me. So it's like leasing an apartment for me. And so if something came through and just kind of wiped it out, and then I'd have to go do something different, I really believe that unless it was something that I did on purpose, right, then it was meant to be. And then I'll find my spot somewhere else where I'm supposed to be, right? It's the same thing as if somebody came in and acquired us, or if we acquired another company or whatever, we just pivot and move in the direction that where I'm going to be of most maximal usefulness to other people, right? That's my debt. My debt is to help as many people as possible. If it all got wiped out, I'd find something else to be helpful to other people.
Yeah.
I don't think it will. I really do think that I could find a successor that could come in and take this over, and it will do what it's supposed to do. But am I going to do that? Not until someone comes in and God himself says that I want you to go focus on kids 100%. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
but when I started this, I worked at the tech firm for 3 years. So I didn't even get into, paying my debt off, uh, until 3 years in. Like, but prior to that, I was doing things that probably didn't look normal, like giving people rides to, job interviews, or helping them find an apartment, or sponsoring guys through recovery. Like there was a whole F5 like mindset that was happening before I started F5, right? And so if I have to go back to working at a tech firm and then get to do F5 for fun and for free, I'm still going to die a happy man.
Mhm.
I might struggle a little bit with the ego of like how I lost, right? But I mean, this all happened in the last 6 years. Like I'm supposed to be at a tech firm. Wait a minute. No, I'm supposed to be in a homeless shelter. No, I'm supposed to be in jail. Like it's a pivot that my life just keeps getting enhanced. So if something came and wiped it out, probably means my life's going to get better.
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts, Adam. One is, uh, when I worked at the church, my job was ministry. And when I left the church and went into real estate full time, I thought my job was real estate, when realistically my job was still ministry.
So,
And I just heard that in you, is to say, hey, your job right now is ministry. And even if you're not in the ministry, you're still doing ministry.
yeah.
So I think that's a fun little parallel. You're using more God language than I've heard you use in the past. What's happened?
I think let me be clear. I still don't go to church. I don't, I am not a praying man. I'm not,
But let me pause for a moment. You believe in God, yes?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, your the Bible tells us to pray constantly with everything that we do, every breath, every action, everything that we do is a prayer. So although you maybe aren't folding your hands and saying, "Dear baby Jesus," it doesn't mean that you're not a praying man, but continue.
I'm conscious of my prayer. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not the stereotypical get on my knees, pray, read scripture, stuff like that. But yeah, I am, because I can't explain life anymore. I can't explain, like I've gotten to a point where I feel like if this is not the life that was given to me by something bigger than me, then I'm living someone else's life. Like I'm not supposed to be here. And so when people ask me, what's it like to be the CEO of like the fastest growing nonprofit provider of recovery services in North Dakota, I just tell them it's weird. It's super weird to me, because it's like my resume doesn't say that I'm going to be a CEO. It says at best I'd probably be doing sales, somewhere. Like that was my skill set. And it was usually because I was good at bullshitting. Like for me personally, I know there's salespeople out there that they're just genuine good people and they're good at sales. But for me, I was kind of the bad news bear sales guy that ended up finding recovery before he got too much responsibility. Like that was, kind of what it was. And so the reason I'm talking about God is because I think I'm at a place in my life where like I said, I just can't explain it anymore. And so people keep pointing the finger at me that I'm doing these great things and that I'm amazing and that I'm creating an awesome business and stuff. But two parts on that. One, I should have never been in that position in the first place, so I can't explain that. Two, God himself is selecting the people to work here, because I would not be able to run this company if I didn't have the leaders that I have at
Mhm.
this company. And they just showed up. Like we didn't recruit, we didn't go out and try and find people. They just showed up, and they were just as passionate about this as I was, and they don't know why either. And so I feel like there's been some kind of like revelation in some people's eyes. There's been like a revolution that's happening in people's hearts, and there's some kind of like even a reformation that's happening where people are looking at people differently as soon as they walk in these doors. And so I feel like God has just, like, instead of me just paying off a debt, it's almost like he's like, all right, let's see what he does with this now. let's see what he does with this. And I think, you know, God will never give you more than you can handle. I think that's bullshit. I think that he believes I can handle a lot more than what I can believe, that I believe.
Yeah, because you're
And
not
he just
carrying it
won't.
alone, man. That's the
Yeah,
difference. God's
yeah.
gonna give you so much more than you can carry on your own, because he's there to say, like, listen, I gave you these people, and I gave you these resources, and I gave you these gifts. And by the way, I'm here. Like, I got to say this, Adam, and I don't know if anybody's ever told you this before, but you are anointed.
Mm,
You are chosen by God.
mm,
Uh, and God has used your addiction for his glory, and he has used your pain for his glory, and he has used your sins for his glory.
mhm.
I feel like I'm a Baptist pastor right now. I feel so good. Uh, uh, but 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 man, like, I had a team member a couple of years ago send me a Marco Polo. It's like a little video text. It's like Snapchat for adults. Uh,
Yeah.
and he sent me a message, and he's like, "Hey, I was talking to this gal and who we knew mutually." And he's like, "And you came up, and um, we both agreed that you were anointed." And it was the first time somebody had ever said that to me. And it's like, I was chosen by God, like that.
Mhm,
That's so different than being a child of God.
mhm.
Is you're chosen by God. And I'm careful with that word. I don't throw it around all nimbly bimbly. Like, I'm serious about it. You are anointed, that
Mhm.
God has chosen you, and he has said, I'm going to use you for some crazy glory. And the fun part is he's just getting started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's next?
Well, first, I 100% agree with you. I think everyone is a child of God, but there's certain ones that it's almost like a weird, like win-win game. Like, because you know that if you're chosen by him, you're gonna win. Like,
Hmm.
but it also means you're gonna
There's
go through a lot of shit.
it's so much pressure. It's so much shit.
Oh my gosh. It's just like, if I haven't slept good at night in probably, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. I'm constantly waking up in the middle of the night thinking of stuff and devouring it and deconstructing it and trying to rebuild it. And then sometimes I'll just, like, I can't sleep because it's, my mind just doesn't stop. So it's just like, I've just kind of gotten used to it now. It sucks. I hate it, but I've gotten used to it. But it's part of the territory of when you get selected, you play, and I get an opportunity to play. And so, uh, what's next? Well, F5 is really like, it's like a real it's like a real business now. So it's, before it was like, I could just go to the jail and take some pictures and post them, and and now it's
Adam,
like we
7 years ago, we were figuring out who's going to buy cookies for the inmates this
right.
week. That was the biggest concern that F5 had 7 years ago.
Yeah, and I was paying myself about $400 every 2 weeks just to
Uh-huh.
ensure that child support got paid. Like, it
Uh-huh.
was, and so we've came a long ways, and we have like policies and handbooks, and I think my big thing is that I just want to make sure we don't forget where we came from. Like, it's really easy when you fill the, you buy properties, and you now you're driving nicer cars, and you get to do some really cool things and get spotlighted and picked by the governor to do stuff. Like, it's really easy to start thinking a little more of yourself. And I've struggled with it, right? Especially if someone calls me on my shit. Like, I'm not always the best to respond, but I will be. I will be. I just, sometimes
It's got
my
to digest for a
instinct,
little bit, right?
yeah, I need some process time. I need to adjust, and I'll respond, and I'll probably apologize for the way that I acted. And I'm learning just as much as everyone else. So, we're gonna move into a chapter network, and we're gonna start building out chapters in other states. And that's my big play for 2024, is I want to have one chapter by the end of 2024, five by the end of 2025, and 30 by the end of 2030. And so that's the play. So the hope is that we can build out peer support, youth services, and housing in all 50 states eventually.
The anointed one, Adam Martin. Really proud of you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that, dude.
Folks, Adam has a pretty killer podcast as well as some great things that he's doing at all times. So find F5 on the Googles and on your podcast and all those other things. Adam, I'm grateful to do this life with you, man. Folks, if you like the Redefined podcast, I need you to go to that subscribe button and then smash it. Smash that subscribe button because we want you to keep on getting the good stuff that these brilliant people are doing. They're showing the ugly side of the pretty. And we love you. Thanks for being here. And we will catch you next time on the Flippity Flip. God bless.